All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Ridge Talk. I'm Justin. Over here on the end, we've got Daniel. And here in the middle, we got a very special guest with us today, Debbie Stavinsky. Debbie leads the Celebrate Recovery Ministry here at Southridge Church. And for those who may have missed it, we just had a 10-year anniversary celebration service for Celebrate Recovery on Sunday, November 5th. And Debbie, just how did you feel as a result of that service? What kind of emotions were going through you at the end of that service?
Oh, I don't have enough words. It was so exciting. I just could feel such a presence in that service. Both of the services, particularly in the 9. I don't know if because it was first, but it was energetic. It was passionate. I just felt the presence of the Lord moving, and we like to say a lot of times, doing his thing. He was doing his thing.
It was a powerful service for sure. I had one person come up to me and said, "Why did we wait 10 years to have a service like this?" And I was like, "Great question. I don't know. We'll do it again before the next 10 years is up."
Well, and you could tell them it isn't just every 10 years. We do this every Thursday night.
Every Thursday night. That's right.
Every Thursday night, 6:30.
So just to tell people a little bit about Celebrate Recovery, Celebrate Recovery is finding freedom from any hurt, habit, or hang-up.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of people hear the word recovery and they just automatically think of addiction. Mm-hmm. And they think, well, you know what? I'm not struggling with an addiction to alcohol or any other substance right now. So is Celebrate Recovery for me? But I know, and I know you know, that Celebrate Recovery is not just an addiction-based ministry. So just tell us more about that. You know, what do you mean when you say any hurt, habit, or hang-up?
Wow. I mean, from any hurt, habit, and hang-up. It's so broad and so general that I think oftentimes we do miss the specifics of it. And so, you know, all of us have lived in a broken life, and we've been raised by, as much as lovingly as parents may have raised us, they were broken people too. Yeah. All of us in this world are broken. And as a direct consequence of that, you can't raise perfect children in a perfect life and everybody has a perfect story. It just isn't that way. This recovery program talks and addresses that, that from our broken places, whether things we've done to ourselves that have caused this brokenness, or whether it's been done by other people, or if it's just the effect of this broken world, right? We just live in a broken world. That causes us to handle life in a way that often is a broken way. Mm-hmm. So the sins have the consequences. We deal with those consequences imperfectly. Mm. And as a result, we make mistakes, we make bad choices, we get ourselves into situations, or we live with people who do those things, and then there are consequences, and there's, you know, sadness, depression, anxiety, financial ruin, body image issues, all manner of anxiety and depression. It's just on and on and on the list goes. We had a beautiful graphic that Jennifer Wilson did for us that was a heart-shaped, and in it had just a multitude of things, hurts, habits, and hang-ups that people could say, yep, I have that. Oh, yep, I can relate to that. So,
yeah, somebody told me after the service, just looking at that graphic, and maybe we can put it in the show notes here for everybody, but they said, if you look at that graphic and can't identify with at least 5 of those, you're probably lying.
Yeah, right?
Wow. Now, one of the things, Debbie, as you were just talking, it sounded like you were distinguishing, to me, it sounded like you were distinguishing a little bit between sobriety and recovery. And I know that's something that you've talked about before. Right. Can you kind of unpack that? How is sobriety different than recovery? And what is the emphasis of Celebrate Recovery?
I think that's a great question, and I get asked it often. And honestly, it came with such clarity for me just recently when I was trying to really look at what is the difference between sobriety and recovery. And I think there's a lot of great programs where people can go to get sober. In other words, they can go to get rid of a thing or stop a thing.
Stop a behavior.
Exactly. A habit of something. Yeah. But recovery encompasses more than that. It's not just about stopping a thing. It's about starting some things, right? The Bible talks a lot about, in Matthew, when the demon goes out and there's a space left, and then nothing takes up that space, and the demon returns and brings all his friends, right? So that illustration to me talks about same with habits and attitudes and things. If we make a space where we're clearing things out and nothing takes that space is going to be filled up with something. And if we don't fill it with the Word of God, if we don't fill it with healthy choices, healthy behaviors, healthy people, then that's very likely that what we got rid of will come back and in full force.
Yeah, it's certainly a more holistic way of looking at a person's life and going from making bad decisions and bad choices to good ones. And with what you just talked about, the passage in Matthew, it's the idea of, well, the evil spirit leaving, but then it needs to be replaced with the Spirit of God, right?
Exactly.
That apart from the gospel at work in someone's life and God residing within us, all the other stuff, it's just behavioral modification,
Exactly.
right? But Celebrate Recovery is about more than behavioral modification, right?
Absolutely.
It's about life change.
It is about transformation. You know, we say all the time, hope and fruit. That's what we focus on. Hope, to begin to help someone come to the belief that things can change, life can change. And you know, that stage of people sharing their testimonies, that was evidence of change, that people can change. God does change our lives. God changes our lives. We just surrender to what He's willing to do. And when we heard those stories and we hear the testimonies, which are so powerful, we love hearing stories. We love hearing testimonies of what God does in people's lives. But when someone who's sitting, hearing that, maybe for the first time, or maybe in a hopeless situation, if they can come to a place where they can begin to dare to believe that change is possible and hope is for me too, that is where we hope to be able to send this message that Celebrate Recovery is about that. We are about that.
I know that some people might come in to Celebrate Recovery. They've got a lot going on in their lives. And just being at one service or event, they're like, oh, I'm feeling so much better now. And then they walk away, and you might not see them again for several weeks because they're like, hey, I got whatever it is off my chest. I'm feeling really good. But I know you regularly communicate to people, keep coming back. Right. Don't come just once. Keep coming back. What is it about that repetition of keep coming back that really helps people in their process of recovery?
Well, that's a great question. And that is, I tell people all the time, we have all these corny sayings, and we do, but they're truth. They're truth. And one of them, the keep coming back, when you'll hear that all the time at CR, keep coming back. We say, keep coming back. Repetition, we know from just brain research, repetition, what it builds into our memory, our brain, how that affects our bodies when we do something on a regular basis. Well, it's absolutely true too in our spiritual and our emotional part of our being as we're just redirecting, right? Redirecting, trying to grab hold and cause these changes we want to stick. But to your question, what I feel happens sometimes is people begin to feel better, just like people who will take a medicine and begin to feel better and then not finish their medication. That's never advised, right? It's always advised, finish it out, continue, because it has to get beyond the symptom level of things, right? And that's our feelings often are symptoms of something else that's going on. And so if all we're addressing are the symptoms, right? It's just like taking your antibiotic for 2 days and feeling better instead of finishing out for 10 days as the doctor maybe had directed. That kind of an idea is what we try to encourage people because we do know, feelings are roller coasters.
That's right.
Up, down, up, down. So great, you're feeling better. Fantastic. But there's probably a dip coming. So let's
prepare for the dip.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. So were you going to say something?
No, you go ahead,
Daniel. I'll just, tell us a little bit more. Just how did CR as a ministry even get started? What was its origins, nationally? And also just here at Southridge.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll speak to the national part first. It was 1991 when Saddleback Church in California held its first CR meeting, and I believe there were like 42 people at that meeting. So 32 years later, I don't know how many people they have on a CR night. Their night is Friday night, but in the old information that I had, which is about 10 years old, 700 people were coming to their Friday night
Wow.
meetings.
Wow.
Yeah. So how does something like that happen? That a move of God for sure, but people have to come finding what they're looking for, right? That's what people do to keep coming back to a thing, right? You have to be, a need has to be being met. There's something happening there. And to CR, how that started was a man named John Baker. He was recovering from alcoholism, and he was a new Christian. And he wrote a letter to his pastor, ended up being like 12 pages, I think, 13-page letter of an idea he had. And the idea came out of he had been attending AA meetings, which, again, we're great. We love people go to AA. But in his AA meetings, he wasn't finding a place to talk about his growing relationship with Jesus. And that's what he wanted. And so he said, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea if, and he pitched the idea, and Rick Warren was the pastor at that time, said, love that idea. Why don't you start that? And so that's kind of how it birthed. But Rick Warren did work very closely with John Baker to develop not just a program, but a program that was foundational on the relationship with Jesus. That's essential. And on that foundation then were these pillars that were developed to keep this program alive and growing. And it has certainly done that. I mean, I can say from my personal experience here, 10 years ago, well, 11 years for me in my recovery, 11 years ago when I started recovery, there were no Celebrate Recoveries in Marion County.
Yeah.
So I had to go up the road about 45 minutes to Lost Creek and go to a CR there. But I engaged in the CR meeting as well as a step study, which was an additional night, which is part of the curriculum, which is part of what I was talking about with these pillars. Through that process of studying for about 8 months, 9 months, really, it probably took us, going through the curriculum of the CR, God began to take me through these understandings, these steps, these principles. And at the end, it challenges you with, okay, now that you've gotten this and these changes have occurred in your life, how are you going to move forward in service? And so out of that, for me, we need a CR in Marion County. So I went to our then pastor was Seth and tried to pitch the idea to him, and shared the story. He stopped me midway and said, stop. And I was like, what's wrong? And he said, you don't need to sell me on CR. What do you want me to do? And that's kind of how we started. And that was like, if I remember right, it was February, and we moved into our new building in June. End of July, we started our CR group, and we had about 40 people in our group, and we opened it to the public 1st of November. So, which brings us to, it was 2013, and here we are.
November 2023, 10 years later.
Right. That's right.
That's incredible. And at the service, by the way, if you didn't get a chance to see the service, I would highly recommend you go back. It's incredible stories. I think we actually have 2 different videos because we had different people sharing different stories in each service. But
at the very least, watch the stories from both services. So you can hear,
just a powerful, powerful service where we get to hear stories of transformation and really get to hear some of your story as well and hear the heart behind it. And you said there were pillars that this was built upon. Did you want to share any of those pillars or what it was built upon?
Sure, because it's not something we talk about a whole lot. Again, there is so much to this program, so much. It is, I'm still, 11 years into this, I'm still learning aspects of it and understanding in new ways. Oh, that's why that was set up in there, and that's why that works that way. What I find invariably that happens is when somebody comes to start a CR, they think, oh yeah, that's a great program, but we're going to do it this way. And like, I did it, we did it here. I see other CRs that I helped get started. They do it. But the truth is, the reason this program is still in existence after 32 years and growing is because the process works. And so stick to the process, right? I say trust the process, because the process is built on Jesus Christ and it's built on these other pillars. And I'll just share them briefly. So there are 7 pillars, which is really wisdom, right? And wisdom talks about that in Proverbs, that wisdom builds her self on 7 pillars. And I just last week was trying to figure out what are those 7 pillars. And I really couldn't come up with all 7 of them. I'm not saying these are from that proverb. I'm just saying these are wisdom. And these are the pillars that CR is set upon. And the first one is worship, right? Worship is a very large factor when we come to a CR meeting on a Thursday night, and in all CRs, you will always find a worship component. And that is because, they base it on Isaiah when he said, you will sing as in a celebratory manner when you enter onto the mountain or something. That was talking about, a festival. That's what it said. We celebrate as if we were going to a festival. So I love that. And I do know, no judgment here, but I'm just saying, CR worshipers are like so passionate in their worship. And it is like they're celebrating something that honestly, from their experience, it has a depth to it. That what they're celebrating is because they've seen the brokenness up close and real and have seen that transformation and the rescue of Christ pulling them out of that brokenness, out of the mire and the muck of life that decisions got them into, and they were rescued by the King.
Yeah, so I had been to at least one of the meetings here at CR, and one of the ways that I would describe the worship and all the really everything that happened that night was there was not even a hint of pretense. That everybody's just themselves, and they're excited to be there, and it's exactly what you're describing was what I experienced. That it's not just overly familiar. There's a level of excitement and energy to it. So I would agree with that.
Yeah, thank you. I say this, and I don't say this in any judging way or condemning way, but oftentimes my Sunday morning family are all fine. Because you just ask them, hey, how are you today? I'm fine. Everybody's fine. And everybody's smiling. And on Thursday night, not that everybody's not okay, but there's an authentic disclosure about, I'm struggling. I'm having a hard time, and this is what's going on. And I don't know if it's just because on Sunday morning there's just not time for that. It's not maybe the appropriate place. But I say that often. I say, what? My Sunday morning family's all fine. My Thursday evening family, they're all authentic, right? They're talking about what's real.
And Daniel and I know that we're not all fine.
I know that you recognize that. So it's, again, no judgy. But it's just, I guess I want to encourage people that it's a safe place to come. You don't have to spill your guts. You don't have to tell everything that's going on, but you can take off the mask. It's okay to not be okay because it's not a permanent state. Your brokenness is not a permanent state. I mean, it is in general terms as far as this world is broken, right? And it's not going to be fixed until Jesus returns.
That's right.
But individually, our relationship with Jesus Christ brings us into a healing, into a forgiven place, into a peaceful and serene place if we follow after him. Doesn't mean our troubles are all gone, but it means we're okay in our troubles.
That's right.
And that's a different... Anyway, so back to the keys.
Yeah.
So worship.
Yeah, got worship.
Leadership training. We really have a great concept for CR. It's called the TEAM, team. The T is a trainer. Now, we have an awesome trainer. It's Lucy Bourne, who is wonderful. She's a teacher by trade anyway. She does a great job of training our folks who want to step into leadership. So every Saturday, once a month, not every Saturday, every Saturday, once a month, Lucy does a training, and we are training our people, which helps them in so many ways in terms of how they're going to serve moving forward. So we train them what CR says. There's very specific DNA in CR. So they say this, you can use CR material anywhere, but if you're going to use it as a CR, you have to stick to some of these things that we're talking about.
That's
the
fair.
DNA of it.
That's fair.
Right. So you're going to use a trademark, you got to go by their policies. And so one of them is that you use CR material exclusively. And so this material has been developed over years, and it's very effective. Really does help people step into positions of leadership if they're willing and ready. We don't take just everybody. You have to have a level of sobriety. You have to have consistency, like you're showing up for your CR meetings. You know Jesus, right? You have a personal testimony of salvation. Those are some of the, I'll call them requirements to be in leadership. But if we don't train our leaders, it leaves CR to just kind of shrivel away to however people think it best done. And that's not always the best.
No.
The next one is, and this is you guys, senior pastor support. one of the pillars. A CR will not be productive in a church if it does not have senior pastor support. And so I just want to take this opportunity to thank you guys. I have a little something for you from our little CR group. It's for all of you, so you can share it with Sean. But
you.
because
Thank you,
we
Debbie.
appreciate that you support us like you do. We say it every week in our meetings. If you're there, you'd hear it. Listen, we love Celebrate Recovery. We love Southridge, and they support us 100%. And we appreciate that. So we're saying it again, and we just love the church is available to us. It's just open-handed toward supporting us financially and resource-wise. And we couldn't be happier, and we do appreciate it very much.
Well, we love you guys too.
Thanks. The next pillar that we have is fellowship events. So we have built into the programming, people coming out of brokenness a lot of times have had very unhealthy fellowship experiences, right? They hang out with people that aren't healthy for them or in places that aren't healthy for them. So it's very important to CR that we provide a safe environment for people to fellowship and to meet one another and connect on a personal level. And so every meeting, we have a cafe at the end of the meeting. Now, some Celebrate Recoveries have a meal before, but we have not found that to work. But we enjoy other CRs who do it. And when we're invited there to share our stories, we go and enjoy their meal, which precedes their meeting. But for us, the cafe seems to work out really great. We've also invited the church to become a little involved in that. Like some of our small groups maybe want to help sponsor either the food or come serve or just come fellowship with us. We love that. We're trying to kind of work on that a little bit. But it's very important, again, to provide healthy environments for people to practice this transformation, right? These new ways of thinking and being and acting and fellowshipping and just interacting. So anyway, that fellowship part is very important. And then there's just three more. The next one is curriculum. And the curriculum in CR is again, very solid. It's biblically based. Most of the principles, which I didn't talk about, we have 8 principles, 12 steps. The 8 principles pretty much all come out of the Beatitudes, the passage where Jesus is speaking. And we read those every week. So again, back to the repetition, right? We read either the 8 principles or the 12 steps every week, not as a rote thing, not to just do it, but that it'll begin to click and stick. And they all have scriptures with them. And that's what we tell people to memorize. And the coolest thing I love about their curriculum is they have made everything like a mnemonics-based program, which is great for remembering, right? So a mnemonic for recovery are our 8 principles. So realize I'm not God, earnestly believe, C is consciously choose. I mean, everything is, so you can remember the 8 principles if you can remember the word recovery. And it's very friendly. I say learner friendly, but also the curriculum that they developed is in the 4 step study books that people go through on another night, not CR night, but a different night, where they're working through these curriculums, working through these principles and steps in a way that they're examining their own lives, their own relationships, their past, their present, and what direction they want to go in their future.
You said those step studies are small, gender-specific groups that meet regularly outside of CR to help people. I remember you said it in the service that it was, if CR is the emergency room of the hospital, then the step studies are like intensive care.
Yeah.
This is really where people are going to like hyper-focus on, this is the issue that I want freedom from. So.
Yeah. And they're done in a very specific environment. And that environment is regulated by what we call small group guidelines. So it's not like a Bible study where you're just sitting and talking, hey, what'd you think about Proverbs passage? And how'd you answer number 2? Yeah. It's not like that. It's if we were sitting in the room, of course we wouldn't be because we're mixed gender, but you would answer number 1. And everyone would attend to your answers, and you would have time to expound where you did it at home. So your answers were done prior and thought out and prayed over, and then you share them. Then when you're finished, it would be the next person's turn. And then I'd do the same. I'd share my answer that I did at home in my time. And then when my time is over, the next person, you would share yours. Okay. And really, it's interesting because so much of your time in a small group setting like that is spent listening. Yeah. Not talking.
Yeah. People aren't saying, I disagree, and here's why. They're just listening.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I have learned so much more from my listening time than anything I've ever spoken.
Yeah.
It's huge. I mean, what a changer. Think about it. just in our conversation, like I'm a domineering speaker, right? I talk a lot, so I don't hear a lot. But in those environments, a switch has to happen for me, and it makes me a better listener outside of those rooms. And for sure,
that book of James, he was really onto something.
he was.
Quick to listen, slow to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Imagine that.
good reference.
Imagine that.
I think Debbie referenced it
I did.
in that service. And you know what was really funny about that? I don't think I ever shared this with you. The devotional that I wrote for that week was all from the book of James. And that was completely unplanned.
Yeah.
Like it just worked out that way. So,
Well, James has a lot of good things to say, and one of them that we didn't even talk about, and it's not on here, but is the whole issue of being joyful, in your tribulation. And anyway, that's another talk. We did talk about that though in the Sunday.
We
morning,
did.
So last two new groups, right? So in CR, there'd be a large group meeting for the first hour. Everybody's in there together. That's when you're reading principles. You're either getting a lesson or hearing a testimony. It's where we worship. It's where we recite the program principles or steps. Then we move, after that hour's over, to gender small groups. So women meet separately than men, but we also break out some of us to issues. So we have a men's addictions group. Now that means addiction to anything, right? Not just drugs. And there are many. And we have a women's addiction group. And then we also have a woman's A to Z group, or we call it hurts, habits, and hangups. But what happens is through this, here's the coolness of this curriculum. So in the step studies that are going on outside of that, we're creating leaders who are going to step up and possibly lead a new group. Like maybe somebody comes out of that step study and they go, you know what? I had a lot of childhood trauma and I want to lead a small group for that. And so that's how a new group gets birthed. Okay. So as these people are coming into their recovery and coming in places of peace and healing, they're able then to step into places of leadership. And these are, and new groups, if you don't get new groups, it's just like a pond, right? It needs a new source of water to keep fresh. And otherwise it becomes stagnant and yucky, right? And we don't want CR to become stagnant. So to keep the new lifeblood, these step studies are where these leaders are being produced. They're healing from their hurts, habits, or hangups. Now they're able to step into and say, yeah, I'm ready to lead a group on grief or financial or body image or whatever their issue was. They now can lead a group. Then that provides different environments for people to be able to go to. And it helps people to go, you know what? I have that issue. That's something I struggle with. So it really does keep the newness of the program. And then the last one is outreach. And that is huge. Our little group is beginning to really step into this outreach. Matthew, it talked about that we are to be lights in the world, right? We're not to hide what we have found under a bushel, right? The little song says no, right? We're going to hide it under a bushel. No. We take our light and we take our light to our community. So our church, where we begin to serve, and we would like to have those opportunities to be able to continue to serve like that occasionally, so that people are seeing us, number one, and people who are ready to serve can step into that. We say every week, serving is a hallmark of healing. Right? You're outside of your own pain now, and I care what's going on with other people. That's a turning point in someone's recovery. When they're ready to step into serving, that's a great indicator they're on a very good path toward healing. And now they're ready. Because when you're in brokenness, it's just like if any other thing breaks, right? You have to tend to it.
Right.
Right? It has to be healed. And that takes attention and purposefulness and mindfulness. So I have to take care of me right now if I'm broken or hurting. But once that period of time is over, and it should be, nowhere in the scripture does it say, stay there, just stay there in your stuff and just waller. No, it talks about healing and moving forward and then being able to encourage others with the hope that you had, right? Right. So that's where this again is a leadership factory. I mean, we are producing people to take a role and say, yeah, I understand.
Well, we certainly saw that at the service, because the Celebrate Recovery crew did everything from greeting and providing the hospitality to all of the serving positions that happened that day happened with CR people. And they were great. I mean, there was a new energy in the room, not just in the worship, but also in the way that people were serving. You could just see the joy and the excitement on their faces. And so Celebrate Recovery has just been an incredible resource and benefit to our church here at Southridge. We can actually see the growth that people are experiencing, and that's in turn producing more growth here at the church. And so,
well, we hope this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, that what has started now will continue. Right? We don't want to stop here. Now that we're out here and like, hey, here we are, celebrate recovery. And we're like, yeah, we want to show up and do what God's calling us to do here.
Let me ask a question that wasn't in my notes to ask. Why do you think people hesitate to want to plug in or attend CR? And I have my answer to that question.
Yeah.
But in your experience, you've been doing this for over 10 years now. Why do you think people hesitate to jump in?
I think that's a great question. I'm not sure I'm right, but my first response is they're afraid.
Yeah.
I think it's scary, right? It's scary to take your mask off.
Yeah.
It's scary to tell somebody something. And the enemy always uses fear to keep us. Like that's the reason we can't stay there, right?
Yeah.
We only can break away from fear. And you know what breaks fear? It's the love, right?
Yeah.
Right? Perfect love casts out fear.
That's right.
So it is the love of Jesus. And that's where we hope. That's where our hope comes in, right? We're saying, hey, we're telling our story. And then people sitting can go, okay, if God did that for them, then maybe there's a chance he can do something for me, right? And so that kind of love, that kind of hope is what can begin to help people become brave enough to take off the mask and say, or however that starts for them. It may not start with taking their mask off. Maybe they just have to sit and cry for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right. But the healing can start.
Yeah, you have to confront something within yourself that you haven't been willing to confront.
Right.
And there's shame completely attached to the fear.
Absolutely.
I'm going to let something out that I haven't released to anybody else that I've just been holding on to, and I'm ashamed of that. I don't want people to see the bad. And the thing is that it all comes back to what you started with. We're all broken. We live in a broken world where we've all sinned and fallen short. We're all broken, and it's okay. We're not alone in our brokenness. And I think CR is an excellent opportunity for people to say, hey, I'm not alone in what I'm struggling with.
I think that one of the girls shares often that he, and I forget exactly how the saying goes, but it's about the power of things spoken in safe rooms. That when you feel safe enough and you can begin to share that what fear has kept you from sharing, right? Because fear has such a power grip on us when we're in its clutches. The truth is, it's hard. I battled fear. I understand what fear is. And just to admit that, people so often will say, well, you don't look like you've ever been afraid of anything. And I think, wow, I was afraid most of my life. And then something happened really bad that everyone would be afraid of. And, the shame that was associated with it, you're absolutely right. You just want to, you just don't want to tell anybody. Just want to tell anybody this, right? And all it does is gain power. All it does is gain power over you until it's shared. And you know what? There's just something about it that lightens the minute it's out. It loses its power. Even if you just tell one person, right? It just got divided. It's right? The whole just got divided. It's not near as heavy. And once you say it once, it's easier to say it the next time, right? It just becomes easier and easier. And that just, just the love and the healing that begins to be the impetus for you to keep healing, right? So the same thing that kept you in bondage can work the same way to bring you into healing, except it's Jesus and love and peace and all the things he desires for us. He does not desire for us to be locked afraid in our broken place. It's not why he came. And it's different completely from being forgiven. I always want to make that point. You can be saved and go to heaven with all your brokenness if you want. But that's not what he intended. He bring freedom, right? Truth sets free. Jesus is truth. He's the way, the truth, and the life. And he came that we might be free completely. So when James does a nice job of talking about that, right? Yeah, he does. He says, it's not about just your forgiveness and your salvation. That can happen. And for sure, we want it to. But this healing that comes on is different. And it is the life, right, that God intends maybe for us to have, that we are just maybe too afraid to even believe we could ever have. And he's saying, oh no, child, I have good things. I have good things in store for you. So.
And I know that topic of freedom, I spoke about it just doing the announcements this past Sunday. We live in a culture that says freedom is the ability or the right to do whatever you want to do. And the scriptures and Celebrate Recovery communicates it correctly. It's not about what you have the freedom to do. It's about what you've been freed from.
Absolutely.
You're being freed from your need to be in control. You're being freed from all of your hurts, habits, and hang-ups. Yeah. That's what real freedom is, and that's what people are missing out on. And I think one of the reasons people maybe hesitate to jump in is they're more interested in the freedom of what they have the right to do than interested in getting rid of the false self and what they need to be freed from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Debbie, last question. Are there any other thoughts that you have? Anything else you'd like to say? If there's like one person out there that you hope this message goes out to today, what's one thing you want to say to them right now?
Oh, wow. You are loved. There's hope. Hope for the thing you're afraid to hope for. I just feel like that's powerful. The thing that we're afraid to hope for, right? The thing we're afraid to believe in is possible because the Bible says it is. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And he is our strength. And so it isn't this program. CR does not bring freedom. Jesus Christ brings freedom. Mm-hmm. Celebrate Recovery is a vehicle so we can learn about these freedoms, right? These principles we talked about, I want to say this. They're all important, but for me, Principle 7, which says reserve a daily time with God for prayer and reflection, right? That's it for me. That's the key, right? The daily coming before him, daily conversing with him, daily examining the scriptures, and daily finding the power for him to heal me and for him to empower me to walk into whatever it is. He says in Jeremiah, for I know the plans that I have for you, right? Mm-hmm. God knows the plans that he has for us, and the plans that he has for all of us. And they're really usually far beyond what we could think, know, or imagine, right? I just say, pop the lid off, baby. Just go,
and keep coming back.
And keep coming back.
I love it. Debbie, thank you so much for
my pleasure.
Joining us here today.
It's great to have you.
I loved it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for watching Ridge Talk. As always, you can follow by clicking below. And also, we'd love for you to share this interview with everybody you know. So you can click the share button and get it out there. Thanks again for joining us.
Bless.